I'm the creative producer, well, and founder of the company, and as well as the lighting designer. So I think I could define it as the independent performing arts sector, specializing in physical and visual theater, immersive experiences, as well as large-scale international projects that we produce. I have about 25 years of experience
Wow.
in the sector. Yeah, I think at the beginning, sustainability was more about the environment and making environmental decisions about how we tour and how we move around the world. But I think it's changed more towards the sustainability of the company and of maintaining its structure and being self-sustaining, which means being versatile and being able to do many projects at once to be able to survive. With the new generation of artists and young producers who refuse to accept the old hierarchies. I think they're starting to stand up and say no. And I think this is something that happens a lot in Mallorca. You get, well, this has always been done like this, and I've been fighting saying, but there are other ways of doing things. So I think the new artists coming up are sort of more willing to say, no, actually, we can do this differently. And what keeps me up at night, I read that more as what troubles me, like what
Yes.
doesn't let me, yeah. So it's the fragility of our ecosystem in places like in Mallorca, where I'm from. So we are reliant on political cycles, the lack of core funding. It's a constant kind of struggle of juggling to just day by day get by.
Mm,
Um, it's a battle, but I know that it can be done differently because I've lived in different countries. I've lived in the UK, in Australia, and I know that other ways are possible. Here, it's a constant battle to try and get things changed, but in the end, it's just a financial loss to us because we depend on bank loans and we pay interest and we get grants a year later, and no one is paying for those interests apart from us. So this comes out of our kind of pot of money. So it would be money that would go towards the company, but it goes towards paying those interests for grants that have been granted and published, so they're legally binding, but they arrive a year later. For me, it was when La Mecánica started as two of us, a partnership, and it was when we went separate ways, and I became the sole director of the company, and I realized that my like when I stepped out of the shadow of this singular dominant male other partner,
mm,
um, I hadn't been listening to my own voice and following my own instincts. So now being my own boss and just being able to make the decisions, I've found that I do trust my instinct. That's, this is what I've been doing for many years. I know kind of the way around, and I know I might not necessarily know why I do things or when I do them, but I know I have to do them. So I've learned to trust that. Yeah,
that makes
definitely.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. It sort of, this experience taught me that it isn't about one person holding all the answers. It's about having the courage to trust your own path and to create spaces for multiple perspectives to thrive. So it's kind of having a more open, yeah, that there's not only one path or one way or the right way. There are many, many ways to get to where you want to get to, and that you don't need to know where you want to end up in. That every opportunity, every experience will enrich your experience and your abilities, and you will end up where you need to end up. But it's not a made path, if that makes sense,
Yes.
and that you can make your own path. Yeah. Um, I think I'm not very good at that. I think I see it in the teams that I build and the amount of people I employ and the projects that we do and the reach that we have and in the response from the audiences that we get. I think that's how I'm measuring, okay, we're on the right path and we're doing good, but I'm not very good at kind of um holding on or kind of paying attention to what exactly it is that has made that growth or has changed that. A lot of people are asking me to do workshops about on producing, especially on this island, because our company is very different from the rest of the companies in Mallorca. We're touring mainly internationally,
Mm.
so a lot of them say, so what is the key? And it's not just a single key, it's many years and it's many keys. So I guess this is one of the positive things of not having core funding or a board or anything like that. Those
Mm.
sort of systems don't really exist in Spain unless it's for big institutions. So we have a lot of flexibility in what we do and how we do it. And it's a mixture of grants and income from touring. So our income sort of, it really varies. It goes from 75 touring to 25 grants when we're just on tour. And then when we're producing, it could go to 75 of grants and 25 from touring, because it's that balance that keeps moving. In Spain, absolutely
Yes.
not. No. Especially because they don't value upcoming or young artists with no experience. You get points for the number of years you've been working, or the number of employees you have, or the number of people you employed. So the bigger structures, the longer you've been there, the more points, the more money. It's insane. So for younger artists, it's really difficult to get on, to get started, to get on those kind of grants. And as I've mentioned before, in Spain, like you have to advance the money all the time. So smaller structures or independent artists, they might not have, even for a small project, they don't have 20,000 euros, 30,000 euros to advance and pay for a production. And here in Spain, you have to pay everything and you have to demonstrate it that you've paid everything before you get the money. Some grants give you 50% in advance, it depends a little bit, but it is a constant kind of, you're acting as a bank, basically. I think in my context, in Mallorca and Spain, it's about our cultural model being broken, because it's entirely dependent on political whims and bureaucratic paralysis. Um, like we pretend that these short-term grants and changing political priorities are a stable foundation, but they're not. It's not sustainable in the long run. And a lot of artists burn out. A lot of companies, they struggle for 10, 20 years, then they close. So we see a lot of that happening. People just give up because it's really hard work. I think I'm still learning. I think I'm my worst enemy. I push myself beyond reasonable boundaries, and I sort of set the boundaries for the people around me, but not for myself. So yeah, I need to learn that.
I,
Yeah, I mean, I have this clear moment. I lived in Australia for 8 years, and my children were younger, and then we moved to Mallorca, and my youngest was 10 years old. She's like, "Mama, in Australia, you worked a lot less, yes?" And I said, "Yes." And we had more money, yes? And I went, "Yes." So since returning to Spain, I have never worked so much in my life and earned so little money. So yeah, there's something definitely not working, and a 10-year-old can see that. Um, I think years ago we used to be able to go on holiday and you were gone for a week or 10 days and that was okay. Like, you know, but now it feels like everything is instant. Everything is like we get gigs on WhatsApp. We get a WhatsApp asking us, for a date, and it's like, it's insanity. It's gone to a level where you not only it's not only email, and the email is just never ending, but it's email, it's on WhatsApp, sometimes on Instagram. There's so many ways where, the information is arriving. And I think that's really tricky now to find the balance of, okay, I'm off. The world will keep on turning. Um, but my rest and recovery is doing a puzzle, for example.
Mm.
You just, that's sort of one side of it. Or at the moment, I'm learning Arabic. So going to Arabic twice a week for 2 hours. So going to class and just using my mind for something that is not work, using my brain for something very different, learning to write in a different alphabet, kind of that side of it. For me, that's rest because it switches me off from everything else. Yes, I mean, there's constant burnout, I feel, especially since the pandemic. It's sort of the rhythm of everything. It's constant, like you feel like you're always running behind the train and never catching up. Um, and I think what gets me going is to see the impact we have with our productions, to see the reactions, to see how we're changing lives, how we're opening people's minds, how when we do workshops with teenagers or with university students, they come and they're really thankful and grateful for that exchange. And that keeps me going. And just seeing the people around me, that I work with, it just, yeah, that's sort of what makes it all worth it. Um, I think I feel responsible for my team. I also feel responsible for peers because in this context of, I'm someone in a small place, so I have a lot of people looking up at me and looking at what I'm doing and how I'm doing things. And I also feel responsible in a way for opening doors to young artists and young producers and people trying new things and kind of yeah, making it possible for them to access different structures or information or sharing. Or this is something that in Mallorca it's, I keep the information for myself, then my pie is going to get bigger. And that's something that since I arrived back, it's about sharing, and it's just going to keep getting bigger because the more we share, the richer we all become. And I'm not talking about rich in money, but in experiences, in opportunities. So I think that's something that I do feel quite responsible for in my context. I think it's giving it time, it might not just be a few months, but actually spending time with this person until they feel like they have the tools to get to where they need to get to. So, um, not just about giving advice, but also handing over the microphone or making sure that they have the opportunities to make decisions and then learn from experience what works, what doesn't work. You know, not just do as I say because I know better, but actually, okay, try your way, and we'll see where that takes us. But I think it has to be a long path, over the course that that person might need. Kind of about transferring power rather than just knowledge.
Yes.
Handing over some of that power and going, okay, well, you do it, you try, you suggest, yeah. Um, I think in my context, I think core funding, ideally in 20 years' time, we would have that, where, you're not just struggling to survive on a day-to-day basis. Um, to get there, I think the myth of the struggling artist needs to break, because I think there's a lot of um, we get a lot of comments like, oh, but you love what you do. And it's like, so I shouldn't be paid for it? So I think for that to happen, we need to have um, structures that are not reliant on political cycles, that are not reliant on people making decisions who don't know anything about the arts. They get a salary every month. you know. What, why shouldn't we also have a salary every month? Like there are things they don't understand about our day to day, and I think it really makes a difference when people who work in these institutions are people who have a connection to the performing arts and have a connection to the reality and the ecosystem. And that's something like when living in Australia, you would see the employees of the different government funds. They would go and see work. Yeah, it's a weekend, yeah, it's a night, but they would go and see work because they stay connected with the artists, they stay connected with the sector, and they know who is who. And then there's less um fakeness about what you say you're going to do and all of that. Like we had this instance in Mallorca, this company, they had applied for funding to produce this show, and they'd applied for the same show for several years, but they actually never made the show. And the people who are checking the paper, they're just ticking boxes and, oh yeah, this is a, but they have no connection to the reality. And then there was a huge outburst going, this show never premiered, like where's the money going to? And because of these crooks, now they're making it so much more difficult for us. So now we have to take photos of when we do a performance to prove that we've done the performance. And it's insane. It's like if you have people who work in these institutions who are actually connected with the sector, it would be a lot easier. I think parity in decision making roles and like technical roles, I think um, usually it's like the people in power in my context, the people in power are usually men. Um, and I think being able to have more women as part of those panels, as part of those roles in institutions, as part of that dialogue, I think it would open up um, a bit more of a dialogue in a way. I don't know. I don't think I'm answering this question right. I was thinking about this a lot, but I think there is this sense that women are better for like admin jobs or kind of the producing, but not the decision making roles or the money making roles. And I think that has to change. Yeah, I mean there's some exceptions, of course, but in as a general, in my context, yes, it's usually men making those decisions. Definitely, for me, it's The Second Woman. It's an Australian show that I've been producing international since 2024. It's created and directed by two fierce women, and the piece is a 24-hour long piece where every city we travel to, it's a local actress, and she performs this 10-minute scene with 100 strangers, identifying within the male spectrum, non-binary queer, but within
Yeah.
the male spectrum. So you have all the, all these different masculinities coming through over 24 hours. And what we ask for, and it's by contract, is the whole team backstage is female. So all the camera operators are women, the video editor, the vision mixer is a woman, the stage manager, the participant coordinator. And it's so different backstage when it's all women. It just creates a safe environment. People can be vulnerable, especially for the actress who's on stage for 24 hours. She has a little break every 2 hours. And when she comes out, she can be herself. She can be tired. She can be ugly. It doesn't matter because it's a safe environment. And I think that has just, yeah, been one of the core kind of experiences that has just gone, yeah, we're on the right path. Um, Probably that the myth of meritocracy wrapped in the guise of passion. Yeah, if you're not good enough, you're not going to get there. If you're not, if you don't, no, I don't think the world works that way. It's not necessarily the best person who gets the job. And yeah, it's kind of this thing where if you're talented and you work hard, you will succeed. And remember, we do this for the love, not for the money. And there's this whole thing where, for me, that's a big fat lie. I think there are ways of, and things are changing, definitely changing. I think there's a lot of, um, there's a big shift, especially in the English speaking world, where they're trying to employ kind of in the power roles or the top roles, um, more diversely, or females. But I think what happens as well is they tend to hand over those roles to women when structure is crumbling, when it's failing, whereas men, when they've come in at that point, it's always been a really successful enterprise. When a man has fucked it up, then they hand it over to a woman, and then she will fail because it's not the same. They don't walk in at the same level. And I think that happens a lot with this idea that we need to give a chance to other people, kind of from different backgrounds, to be in leadership. But if there is no bridge between not having any experience and taking on a major role, I think that's what's missing. It's kind of the lead up to those major roles. But also there is always, and we've heard this a million times, there's always a great woman behind a great man. And I think there is something about humility that we as women are more humble.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, this is general strokes. It's not
Yes.
the same for everyone. Of course not.
Yes.
You can't say everyone is like this, but there is a kind of that thing. And I've heard this before, that when a man goes to an interview and they're asked, "Can you do this?" And they might be able to do 50%, and they say, "Oh yeah, I can do 100%." But a woman might be able to do 80%. She said, "Actually, I can do 50%." Kind of that thing of going, not overselling ourselves. And I do that. I
Yeah.
definitely don't oversell myself. I'm always very conscious about being truthful to what I've done and where I come from, and not lie about what, to get ahead. So I think in the context of Mallorca, for example, that's one of the things that I like about being a company here, is that we have direct access to our institutions. So I'm part of a company that is the Association of the Professional Theatre Companies, Performing Arts Companies of Mallorca, and we actually have meetings with the directors, with the politicians, about the funding and the structure and how that works. So we've been able to change a lot of those things. It's very slow and it takes a long time, but it's kind of on a day to day, month by month. We keep working on that. So, for example, what you were saying about how they have favorites, this is something that now they can't use anymore, because the system is a points system, which you have to demonstrate to get the points. So someone assesses those points and you get the funding according to the points that you get. But of course, there's an objective and a subjective side. But they're finally starting to bring in panel, like people to be on the panel that are not within those institutions, to read those projects and then be the objective feedback for those. And I think for young artists, they should get involved from the ground up. They should be part of those conversations with us, because they might have new ideas on how to do things differently. Like, we're still struggling to find ways of not just giving points to what I was saying earlier, of the longer you've been doing this, or the more people you employ, or these points merits that are sort of not really good for young artists. I think that's something that we need to work on. Um, but there has been a lot of kind of behind closed doors deals happening, that we are sort of getting rid of. There's also, because I was on the multi-arts panel for the government of Western Australia, and we had to read 189 applications. There were two experts per field. So there was someone from theatre, someone from dance, someone from literature, someone from visual arts. And then for 2 days, we sat in a room talking about these applications. And after reading so many of them, you realize that there are some people who know how to play the game, and they know how to write those applications and say the things that you want to hear, as someone who's measuring and you know, giving it points. But this is what I was talking earlier about, that connection to the sector, because then if you know the sector, you know that actually on paper they're great, but then what they produce is utter, like, no, it has nothing to do with the reality of what they've put on paper. So I think that's another dangerous zone, especially for young people coming up, learning to play that game of actually, it's not just about writing, you know, what you're going to do, but it's being truthful to your artistic practice, but making it fit within the structures that they've given you, so that they can give you the funding to do what you want to do. You know, it's that thing of, um yeah, I think there's definitely a game that some people learn how to play really fast, and for others it takes years. And now with AI, you know, writing all these funding applications, and you start seeing all these robotic answers to things, and you go, ah, mm, that's not the answer. If your artistic content is not, you know, AI is not going to help you to make it any better. Because
No,
that's
not
one
with.
thing AI doesn't have, creativity. Definitely. What one example of this points based thing is, we went to the Edinburgh Fringe last year. We were at Summer Hall. We were doing 48 shows over the whole of the Fringe. It's an investment of 50,000 euros,
Mhm.
and we applied for funding. We did Edinburgh. We did, you know, we advanced the money to get there, paid for accommodation, all of that. The results of one of the big grant that we had asked for, 25,000, came in October, early October, so after we had been, and we were just below the cutting off threshold, not because we didn't have enough points, but because the money only reached to the top 14 projects. So then I went back and I said, look, I've counted our points, and I think this is not fair because this. So then they put us up. They reviewed our points. They put us up, but it meant that other companies were left out. And I felt awful because that means we're competing against each other for a small pot of money, and that's insanity. What you were saying earlier, Rachel, about, you know, that competition. It's not really a competition, but it is in the end, because it leaves other people out suddenly. Then I was safe, but then my colleagues weren't. And that was awful. Stop waiting for permission. Start small. Um, Collaborate with peers, and learn to juggle multiple projects at the same time. I think finding your tribe, finding the people that you feel you connect and you can build something together with. Don't try to do it on your own. Um, Yeah, I think those are the main things. And then because we're on an island, it's Mallorca. I think our geography doesn't define our ceiling or the end of our reach. I think venturing out, for me, it's crucial. I'm always building bridges internationally because we live on an island. So if the local landscape feels small, I think build bridges to international communities. And it's not an instant thing, and it's not overnight. For me, it's been years of traveling and working around the world. And now I'm sort of um, collecting from that investment that maybe at the time I didn't know was happening, you know? I think lengthen your line. Have you heard this expression?
No.
It's like you have an idea, or just keep going towards what you want. Stop looking at what other people are doing, because then your line gets shorter because you keep looking, like, you know, this is what you want to go towards, then lengthen your line, keep going. That's not in the sense of doing it on your own. It's about, what's your vision? Where do you want to end up? Then keep going. Keep knocking on doors. You never know which door is going to open, you know. It's sometimes I go to events and it's like, why am I doing this? And then there's always a moment when you go, ah, because I met someone who then led me to something that then, you know, we're a network. We're it's all these people all over the world, and we're all there to open up doors for each other and help. I think that's how we all become um, richer and better for sharing. And
Excellent.
richer not in the sense of money, yeah? Yeah. That hasn't arrived yet.